This is our poem Kubla Khan, and I had completed the first stanza, the second stanza also, and I will be starting from this particular uh, stanza, damsel with a dulcimer. So I will just recapitulate whatever we had studied in the first two stanzas, that is. So let us look at the poem, and you will recall that Kubla Khan actually is a poem where Coleridge, as he had declared that he had written this poem, he had composed this poem in a dream, and as such it is a kind of a fragment because he was interrupted by this person from Porlock who came to see him. And when he came back to his table and he tried to write down whatever was in his head, he found that he could not recall exactly what he had in his um, head. So the first stanzas actually describes how Xanadu, this place, this mysterious place where Kubla Khan built his summer palace, that was a pleasure dome, and it was a very mysterious place where this river, sacred river Alf, ran. As we can see, the description of this place is there, and uh, we will also look at, we also saw how uh, the entire poem, how there is a kind of a sense of supernaturalism created by Coleridge, and he brings in this uh, this feeling of supernaturalism in the poem itself, and with the description of the deep mysterious gorge that runs down the slope of a green hill, then description of this woman wailing for her demon lover, and how as we can see, the way that beyond the reach of knowledge, and how deep down a turmoil is going on ceaselessly in the center of the earth, and how the sacred river, after running underground, it comes out and it continues on its journey. So a kind of a supernatural elements of the ancestral voices of Kubla Khan, how those are as if they are calling him, Kubla Khan, as if they can, these ancestral voices, they were prophesying war, and the shadow of the dome of pleasure floated midway on the waves. So the poet ends this stanza with a description that it was a miracle of rare device, a sunny pleasure dome with caves of ice. So it was a kind of a contradiction with a sunny pleasure dome with caves of ice. So ice and sunlight, they were existing side by side. So as we can see that the stream, it looked lovely. The entire construction of the palace was a miracle of mixture of opposites, and the top of the palace was flooded with sunshine, but the foundation of the palace was in caves of ice. So it is a kind of a contradictory kind of a building. And in Kubla Khan's palace, as if Coleridge finds his ideal art. Now, this is the description of the first part, where we can get we are getting the description of the palace and all that, and the supernatural element is quite profound. In the second part of this poem, we will see how he refers to his dream. As we know that this particular poem, Kubla Khan, Coleridge was actually, he got this poem in a dream, as he said, and when he woke up, he started writing, but he was interrupted, so he could not write down the whole of the poem because he forgot, as he said. Now, we will now study the second part of this poem. And here you will find the reference to a maiden, a damsel with a dulcimer in a vision once I saw. A damsel with a dulcimer in a vision once I saw. So a dulcimer, it is a kind of a stringed musical instrument, a musical instrument that is played by the person, the singer, by playing on its strings. So a damsel is an unmarried young woman, and uh, here, of course, Coleridge is referring to his dream. It was an Abyssinian maid, and on her dulcimer she played. So it was an Abyssinian maid. So Abyssinia, actually, it is an African country. It it is referred to as a far off place, and we are taken back to the far off African places. And as we know that in during Coleridge's time, uh, all these countries, to the European mind, to the mind of the white man, Abyssinian, which was an African country, was a far off land, which was difficult to go to. And the word Abyssinia, it has its kind of a musical effect also. So Coleridge is referring to this Abyssinian maid who was playing on the dulcimer with a sweet sound, singing of Mount Abora. Now, what was she singing about? She was singing of Mount Abora. Now, Mount Abora, uh, as with the river, sacred river Alf, so also Mount Abora. These are imaginary names. These are not to be found in the geographical, in any geographical location as such. And Mount Abora, actually, Coleridge got this name, as it seems to the critics, that Coleridge got this name Mount Abora from Mount Amara, Amara, in Milton's Paradise Lost, Book 4. And Mount Amara, there it stands for heavenly bliss. So Coleridge made up this name. Kind of, he was following the example of John Milton. Mount Amara, mentioned by Milton in Paradise Lost, Book 4, line 281. So, singing of Mount Abora. So, it is a kind of a divine, kind of a place of divine bliss. Could I revive within me her symphony and song? So, Coleridge is here. Coleridge is here talking about the song of this young maiden. So he is hoping, or he is uh, telling his readers that he wished to revive within himself her symphony and song. So the kind of music, the kind of rhythm that was there in the maiden's song, that was really very beautiful, very mellifluous and melodious. So Coleridge wanted to uh, reproduce that music. So he's saying that, uh, could I revive within me her symphony and song? Symphony here stands for the kind of a orchestral song. So the rhythm of the song itself. Uh, to such a deep delight would win me. So here he is saying deep delight, that it would inspire him. So this is a kind of a song that would have the capacity of inspiring him. Uh, so that with music loud and long, with music loud and long, so just like the way in which this Abyssinian maid was singing, he would also start to sing loudly and long with a kind of music. He would produce the same kind of music. I would build that dome in air, that sunny dome, those caves of ice. So he is saying that he he would be able to reproduce uh, with the help of the inspiration of that song. He would be able to build that dome in air, as if he would have the capacity to recreate that palace, that sunny dome, those caves of ice. So the poetic imagination, this is the reference to the poetic inspiration that the poet feels. So it would be a kind of a poetic inspiration for Coleridge. And that beautiful song, if it is if he is able to revive within him that song, then it would have the power to build that sunny dome, those caves of ice. Again, there is this antithetical image, as you can see, the dome which is bathed in sunlight, but it has caves of ice inside. And all who heard should see them there. So he's saying that everyone would marvel, everyone who would be looking at that beautiful palace which the poet would be able to create, uh, then they would cry out, and all should cry, beware, beware, his flashing eyes, his floating hair. So here you can see that there is a kind of a reference to uh, this act of poetic creation as such. So the poet says that if he could revive that song in his heart, he would be so inspired that he would be able to build Kubla Khan's dome in the air. So in the sense that, of course, he would not be building it literally. He is not an architect, or he does not have the capacity of building that great palace. But what he would be doing, he would give such a beautiful description of Kubla Khan's palace that it would take a kind of a vivid shape in front of the eyes of the readers who would be reading that poem. So his meaning is this: he's not going to build this dome really with his hands or anything. He's not going to employ people, laborers, to build this dome, but actually he is going to be inspired, and the poetic inspiration would enable him to sort of create this beautiful image through his poems. And what would the readers or the people who would see him in this frenzied state, what would they do? Uh, and all who heard should see them there, and all should cry, beware, beware. So everyone would be crying out to take care. And uh, because the poet is in a frenzied state of poetic inspiration. So as we know that uh, poetry is something that comes with poetic inspiration. And in ancient Greek mythology, as you know, there are the 9 muses, and who are the patrons of the fine arts. and poetry is one of them. So uh, it was thought that the poet in ancient times, he would be divinely inspired. He would be in a kind of a state of frenzy, and then only he would be able to compose his poems. So what would be the kind of image of this poet, this divinely inspired poet? He's saying that uh, he would create this art of poetry under the inspiration stirred up in him by the song of the Abyssinian maid. So uh, the people who would look at the poet in his state of fine frenzy, they would be awestruck. They would fear the poet. They would have a feeling of fear also. And they would say, they would look at him and say, beware, beware. That is why they would say, beware, beware, to stay away from him, not to go too near to him, because he is divinely inspired. He is mad in a sense. So not mad in the general way, as we call people who are mad, but he is divinely inspired, and in that way he is mad. His flashing eyes, his floating hair, flashing eyes and floating hair. So this is the picture of the divinely inspired poet, the flashing eyes and the floating hair. That is, floating hair here means the hair that is being blown in the wind, in the gusty wind, and flashing eyes, that is as if a fire is coming out, as if he is all the frenzy, all the kind of madness of poetic composition that is being reflected through the eyes of the poet. Weave a circle round him thrice. Weave a circle round him thrice. This would mean that there would be a kind of uh, a, a kind of drawing a magic circle and move 3 times round this poet. So in this way, his magic will be bound in that or within that circle. So 3 is a kind of a magical number, uh, and it is the number that stands for the Trinity. As you know, in Paradise Lost also I had explained this, how it stands for the Trinity, uh, the Son, the Son of God, that is Jesus, God Himself, and the Holy Spirit. So these 3 constitute the Trinity, and 3 is an important number in Christian uh, divinity, or in the Christian religion. So weave a circle round him thrice, and close your eyes with holy dread. So holy dread, kind of a fear, as one would feel in the presence of the divine power. So those who would listen to the poet reciting his poems, they would be filled with a feeling of holy fear. So it would be as if the poet would be like a magician. However, there is nothing evil about him, nothing evil or unholy about the poet. He might be divinely inspired, he might be look like a mad person, but uh, of course, he should not be confused with a uh, kind of an evil person. He should not be taken to be an evil person. And that is because he is divinely inspired, and that this divine inspiration will be helping him to compose the poems. So the holy dread would be this awestruck kind of inspiration, as we can see here, how the response of the people would be, what they would feel. So it would be dread or fear for something that is divine or holy. So anything that is that goes beyond the ordinary, it assumes a huge kind of a state, or something that is great, huge, that the human beings, they when they confront such a thing, it inspires awe. So the common man is startled to see a great poet, and this sight is very uncommon. A real divinely inspired poet. That is a very rare sight, a unique sight, it may be called. So obviously, that would bring within the person who is beholding the poet to be in a state of holy dread. So this is the significance of these words. And close your eyes with holy dread. So it would not be possible to look at him. It is such a bright and divinely inspired picture. So obviously, it would be kind of a picture that would be somewhat kind of, you can say, different picture, a kind of a picture which is out of the ordinary, something that is not to be seen every day. For he on honeydew hath fed and drunk the milk of paradise. So the poem comes to an end with these lines: for he on honeydew hath fed. Now, what is this honeydew? Honeydew is divine honey, and it was believed that divine honey fell in small particles with the dew drops at night, and if one could take a few drops of it, one would become immortal. So that was the belief. And poetic inspiration is like that. It can make a man immortal in the sense that he would continue to live on through his poems, through his creation. So that is the meaning here. So divine honey, if one could have the opportunity of drinking a few drops of divine honey, then he would become immortal. So as we can see, honey, as we that uh, obviously we know what honey is, but honeydew is something that it was believed that it fell from the skies. For he on honeydew hath fed and drunk the milk of paradise. The milk of paradise is also called nectar. Nectar. So the divine nectar, the food of the gods. So it is the divine nectar, the milk of paradise. And in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, who were the first man and the first woman, they lived on this milk before they were banished from heaven to the mortal world. So, this is the picture in this stanza of the divinely inspired poem, poet, sorry, the divinely inspired poet. And obviously, with this, the poem comes to an end. So you will notice that this poem, it has two parts. It has two parts in the sense, in the first part, Coleridge is describing the how Kubla Khan had ordered the making or the building of a pleasure dome, and he had chosen a very beautiful and mysterious place to build this pleasure dome. So in the first stanza, we saw how the fertile ground was sort of girdled round. There were beautiful gardens with beautiful sweet smelling trees. And then here in this stanza, in the second stanza, the deep romantic chasm. So how Coleridge describes this place as a savage place. It is both holy, it has some divine qualities, and it also has a kind of, you can say, a supernatural quality, because of the fact that it was the haunting place of this demon, the demon lover of this woman, and how the natural description is there, how from this chasm with ceaseless turmoil seething. So here we can look at the poem where the poet is describing this area in a very detailed way, and how the sacred river Alf was running underneath. It flung up momently the sacred river, how the big stones which were coming out of the center of the earth, and in one place the underground river, it comes to the uh, surface of the earth, and it wanders for 5 miles, meandering with a mazy motion. Through wood and dale the sacred river ran. So the description of the sacred river. And obviously, um, as you can see, there is the reference to the ancestors of Kubla Khan, another supernatural touch. And as you know that in the lyrical ballads, which was a joint venture of uh, Wordsworth and Coleridge. Coleridge had contributed 4 poems, and Wordsworth had contributed 19 poems to that collection. And Coleridge was actually sort of, uh, presenting the supernatural aspect of romantic poetry in his poems. And in Kubla Khan, in the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, in Christabel, all these poems, they have these supernatural touches. So here also we find the same thing. And in this stanza that we have studied today, of course, uh, in the first lines we have the dream, the reference to the dream, where he saw the vision of this Abyssinian damsel playing on her dulcimer and singing of Mount Abora. So Mount Abora, another imaginative kind of a name, a fictitious name. And the poet later on in this stanza, he is expressing his wish to recreate the perfection of the Abyssinian maid song in his own poetry. So as we can understand, in the mind of the poet, what the poet is thinking, he is talking about or thinking about Kubla Khan's palace on the one hand, in the beginning and in the middle part of the poem, and he is talking about this Abyssinian maid song towards the end of the poem. So both Kubla Khan's palace and this damsel's song are perfections of art. So it is only the poet who will be able to achieve this perfection, will be able to bring about a change in society. So a big change in society. And we can see here how the poet looks at himself, the image of the ideal poet he is presenting here, and kind of a inspiring medieval singer of the Middle East, and whose songs would sort of raise the people from their stale customs and dead habits, and a new life, a new awareness would be ushered in. So as we can see, Coleridge, like his contemporaries, his later contemporary Shelley, he also wanted to be a revolutionary, a preacher, a kind of a messiah. So someone who would bring a kind of new message for his fellow beings. So that is the message that is conveyed here. And as we all know that in every society there are conservative people who are afraid of big change, and they would not try to experiment with anything. So they would be afraid of this poet who would be inspired by divine frenzy. So they would try to restrict him by drawing the circle, and sort of in this way they would draw the circle 3 times, trying to restrict his movements. And it is a kind of heavenly manna, M-A-N-N-A, that is a heavenly nectar that the poet has taken, that makes him divinely inspired and immortal. So as you saw in John Keats's poem Ode to a Nightingale, uh, as Keats addresses the nightingale, "Thou wast not born for death, immortal bird." So in a way, here also Coleridge is looking at the image of the divinely inspired poet as someone who would be able to inspire his countrymen and women, and he would appear as a kind of a role model in that sense. So a kind of a visionary, as a visionary poet. So this is the poem, and obviously, uh, though Coleridge had referred to this as a fragment, as you can see here, a vision in a dream, a fragment, as he had said that he was interrupted, and that is why he forgot the other lines, which were quite long. But there is a kind of a continuation. Whatever he has written here, there is a kind of a well knit structure here. It is a kind of a concentrated poem, and there are clear points of references. So we can look at this poem as, you can say, a poem which has many romantic qualities with supernatural elements strewn here and there. It is a poem of nature as such, with its description of the pleasure dome, the beautiful area in which Kubla Khan's palace is built, and the use of the supernatural is another romantic trait. And as we can see, with regards to the nature imagery, the personification of nature is found in the poem, and that is typical of romantic poetry, as if the earth was panting, as if this earth in fast thick pants were breathing. So the earth was feeling restless. So the personification, the earth is uh, likened to a human being. So obviously we can look at this poem as uh, a unique one, with so many beautiful images are there, and the supernatural elements are also there. So as in Christabel, the rhyme of the ancient mariner. However, not much of supernatural elements can be found here, but still not so much as in Christabel and the rhyme of the ancient mariner. But there is the supernatural elements here also in some parts of the poem. So with this, I have come to the end of this poem, and we we have come to the end of the reading of this poem, and I hope that you have enjoyed this poem, because this poem is actually one of the most famous poems written by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and uh, one of the poems for which he is known. And uh, as you know, Coleridge uh, had not written so many poems like William Wordsworth, his friend, but whatever he has left behind for us, that is really a kind of a treasure house, as we might refer to it as such.